Firstly, let's focus in on this report. You cover 12 countries from East to West Africa, the likes of Burundi, Ethiopia, Malawi, and then over in West Africa, you've got Ghana, Togo, and of course, the powerhouse Nigeria. Just set the scene for us. What is the state of the hotel sector generally across these countries?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity and a good day to the listeners. I think that the state of the business hotel industry in Africa is of course quite diverse. So it ranges from highly developed in countries such as South Africa, in Egypt, to a great extent Kenya and so on, Nigeria, to lesser developed in certain other countries. What we attempted to do with this report was to identify those opportunities that may be more evident to the open eye, but also those that are less evident. For example, in secondary cities, but nevertheless up-and-coming cities in these 12 countries. And we think that the opportunities are amazing. At the end of the day, Africa has experienced a substantial increase in investment activity over the years, as well as trading activity, as you mentioned earlier in the show. And together with that, of course, you need a business hotel segment that supports this level of this increasing level of activity. Well,
obviously it would be clear that any business traveller going to a destination would seek the kind of standards that they would get perhaps in the developed worlds, but I'm sure that's not always the case. So where have we seen the most development over the period, over 2011? Where have we seen the most activity in terms of new hotels being built?
Let us put it this way. There's been a substantial improvement in the segment itself in a number of cities throughout Africa. A city like Lagos, for example, has experienced a substantial growth and gradual one over the years in its offer, in its business hotel sector offer. Obviously, sometimes this is accompanied by the entrance of foreign and world-renowned tourism brands, the likes of the Hiltons and Sheratons, etc. But sometimes it's actually also sub-Saharan African chains. The important thing here is, of course, to keep on offering the right quality of service. So the service offer must be of an international standard, depending, of course, on the kind of segment that you are tapping into. And the rates must be kept at competitive levels.
Okay, so where's the biggest backlog right now? If we had to look in terms of supply, where's there an opportunity for anyone who wants to invest in this sector to get into a country and perhaps supply an undersupplied hotel sector?
Yeah. Well, it's a very difficult one and that is exactly what we try to do with this report. For example, in Nigeria itself, there's still, demand is growing at such a pace that there is room for additional supply of hotel accommodation, for example, in Lagos and Abuja itself, but also in an up-and-coming city like Ikeja. If you look, for example, at Mozambique, on the east coast, of course, now we're talking about a Maputo with quite a substantial supply of accommodation. But you take a city like Tete, where obviously there are these fantastic coal fields around it, and offering attracting enormous amount of investment activity, and the business hotel offer is really so limited that obviously there's so great room for expansion. The same happens, for example, in places like Ghana, where Accra may be quite well supplied with hotels. Some of them need possibly refurbishment, but you take cities like Kumasi, that of course really require additional accommodation.
So as you say, these secondary cities is really the focus now. Of course, the focus has been very much on the capital cities, getting businessmen into these spaces, and now these secondary cities, as these economies grow, are coming to the fore and need hotels.
Very important, and have been so overlooked up until now.
Okay, so let's look at the challenges of building these new hotels. What stands out for you is the biggest constraint right now to growing the number of hotels and refurbishing the ones that do exist in the spaces that we're needing that to be done?
Well, you've got a number of challenges which we highlight in the report, and these, of course, we only highlight a fraction thereof. But high investment and operating costs is a major challenge. It really entails upfront incredible costs associated with
more expensive to build a hotel in African cities that you've highlighted here than perhaps developed economies or South Africa?
It would tend to be, without a doubt. It would tend to be because most of the capital equipment required, most of the input costs, most of the input materials are imported in most of the cases. So obviously this raises costs in themselves, but also the operational costs when it comes to food items and so on and so forth, when it comes to shortages of experienced staff. Quite often the expertise that is required to run these hotels has to be imported, so we need to develop these skills in Africa as such. I've
got to ask you one last question before we have to wrap in 10 seconds. Is the IDC wanting to invest in this sector as a result of your findings?
Oh, absolutely. We actually did this report for internal use initially, and then of course because of the upcoming tourism in Dabo we decided to release it. IDC is proactively trying to identify opportunities, operators, so partners to co-invest with in projects in several countries around the continent. We already have an exposure outside of South Africa in the order of about 600 million rand, and we see the outlook for this sector very positively.
Thank you very much for joining us and unpacking some of the views on the hotel sector, specifically focusing, of course, on the business traveller. Jorge Maia, Head of Research and Information at the IDC.